Stay with us, Lord. Today, my dear friends in Christ, is the third Sunday of Easter. Today we read about the experience of the disciples of Emmaus with the risen Lord. If we look at the expressions, the gestures, and the actions of these two disciples, we understand clearly that they were filled with frustrations. They were filled with hopelessness. They had bitterness. They were disappointed. In fact, in one of the expressions of Cleopas, he said, "We were hoping that this Messiah, or this man Jesus, is going to redeem Israel." And you can see how disappointed he was. And that is why they were going back home to Emmaus. My dear friends in Christ, there are many of us who experience this kind of life, even in our relationship, in our family, in our business, even in our lives. Sometimes we are filled with disappointment. Sometimes we are filled with frustration. Sometimes we are filled with, confusion. This was what was happening to these two disciples. And that's why they decided to return home. But in the course of their returning home, the stranger comes, Jesus comes, showing us that Jesus understands everything that we are passing through. Jesus is always present among us. There are 4 things that Jesus did today that you and we should remember. The first thing is that Jesus started walking with them. He walked beside them. No matter what we are passing through, no matter our struggles, no matter our challenges, Jesus is always by our side. The second thing that Jesus did today that we should remember is that Jesus listened to them. One of the ways that we change people is not just to judge them. No, we should not judge them, but we should listen to their own story. So Jesus listened to them as a sign of communion, as a sign of compassion. And the third thing that Jesus did, my dear friends in Christ today, is that Jesus empowered them. I call teaching an act of empowerment because it's an act of leading someone away from darkness into light. So when Jesus started explaining the scriptures to them, they were empowered. Their life changed. And that's why they are going to express at the end of this gospel today that our hearts were burning. My dear friends in Christ, it is important to remember the 4th thing that Jesus did. And what was that? Jesus broke the bread. And it was at that moment that their eyes were opened. My dear friends in Christ, the act of breaking the bread is very, very important because the Eucharist is the summit of our life as Christians. It is in the Eucharist that Jesus nourishes us. In the Eucharist, Jesus maintains us. In the Eucharist, Jesus gives us life. And in that Eucharist, we become one with Him. Look at the 4 actions of Jesus. Takes the bread, blesses the bread, breaks the bread, and gives to His disciples. It is an encounter of transformation. And look at what happened again. After their eyes were opened, the Bible says they turned around and they started going back. It is an experience of transformation, my dear friends in Christ. And one thing we should also remember is that when Jesus encountered these 2 disciples, it was basically their eyes were closed because of their ugly experience. I pray for you today that you may encounter the risen Christ, the Christ who transforms us, the Christ who makes our heart to burn. When you read the Greek translation of this verse 32, you will understand that it meant that, Jesus made their heart to be warm. There are many of us that our hearts have become broken, depressed, so cold. Here comes the risen Lord who makes our heart to burn again with love. I pray for you, for your family, and for everything that concerns you, that as we celebrate this day, the 3rd Sunday, the Sunday of transformation, the Sunday that Jesus Himself encounters each and every one of us, walks beside us, that you and your family may experience transformation, rejuvenation, reanimation, and that Jesus' presence may abide with you. May God bless you.